Okay, and we are recording. Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to the Water Conservation and Sustainability webinar. We have a great lineup of panelists who will be talking about their work pertaining to water systems in Oklahoma, as well as globally, and addressing the global water issues that are occurring currently. And so first up, we have Kimberly Elkin, who is the Watershed Health Director at the Oklahoma Nature Conservancy. So thank you, Kimberly.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about our program. Just to give you a little background, so I've been with TNC, it'll be 9 years actually at the end of June. And when we first started this program, it was called the Freshwater Conservation Program. And here within the last 2 years, we've changed our focus a little more to focus more on that whole systems approach, looking at watershed health. How do we incorporate all aspects of the watershed in addition to land management into that program? And so to give you a little background on TNC here in Oklahoma, this map shows you, if you see the little green dots with letters in there, it shows you all of our different preserves that we have across the state. And currently we own probably closer to about 80,000 acres, but total with conservation easements is a little over 100,000 acres. And I'll just use my mouse here to kind of point out some of the places that some of you might be familiar with. So up here we have our Tallgrass Prairie Preserve where the bison are. That one's about 40,000 acres. And then we have this one out here, B is Fork Canyon Preserve. And then I know a lot of you are familiar in northeastern Oklahoma. We have our Ozark Cave Preserves and our Nickel Preserve over near the Illinois River in Tahlequah. And then we also have Cucumber Creek Preserve, which is near the headwaters of the Kiamichi River, just north of Broken Bow, about 42 miles. And then we also have our Blue River Pontotoc Ridge Preserves down here in the south central part of the state. And so this will kind of play into what I'll be talking about with our watershed health program and some of the places that we've worked in the past 8.5 years, almost 9. So to give you an idea, when we first started this program, I was hired because we did not have any baseline data for any of our preserves as far as the streams and rivers that are located at these various places across the state. Particularly the places where we have active management, like at Fork Canyon, Tallgrass, Nickel, Pontotoc, and then Okoyanali on the Blue River. At Cucumber Creek, we don't have active management, but we did do aquatic monitoring plan for that place in addition to all these other preserves that I had mentioned. And I'll talk a little bit in detail about those aquatic monitoring plans and the data that we've collected over the last several years. So some of the methods that we used when we created these plans and went through and collected data, each one about 3 years. We did a lot with macroinvertebrates. Many of you are familiar with the different techniques of collecting macroinvertebrates. And we also were able to use that data and apply that to the Index of Biotic Integrity, or the IBI, to kind of look at what those IBI scores are in the stream, and then what the state, particularly the Water Board, has collected for different places across the state as well, and making those comparisons. We also did backpack shocking, and so we used backpack shockers to go into the different sites that I mentioned on the previous slide to find out what the fish populations are in there, what the diversity is in those different preserves that we own and have management at the state level. We also were looking at hydrology. So we had flow trackers that we use. We would set up cross sections, as you can see in this picture down here, where we're measuring discharge in the stream. So we would use the USGS protocol to measure discharge in those places, getting the depths and velocities, and then converting that all to CFS. And we also use a DS5 SON for water quality. Now we just look at the basic water quality parameters like pH, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, water temperature. And then we also deployed some water level loggers in those sites as well to get that fluctuation in the water levels. And you can set those however you want. Like we did them on 15-minute intervals, and then we could leave them out there. I think it would collect up to about 20,000 data points. So we could leave them out there, you know, about 3 months and then go back and upload the data to our computer so we could really see what is going on in some of these places on our preserves. And so this kind of ties into this whole environmental flows that a lot of people talk about. Many people here in Oklahoma refer to it as in-stream. And we've had a discussion about the actual name in-stream, because it really does make people nervous in the state to think that you're keeping water in the stream and that it's going to mess with their water permits that they have. And so we're trying to, I guess, move away from that. I know the Water Board uses in-stream, but we prefer the term environmental flows just because it's used across the world. I know some people like the term fish and wildlife flows or fish and recreation flows, but basically it's just keeping that flow within the stream and the river, particularly for those different aquatic life cycles that depend on those different flows in the stream. And so we collected a lot of that data, a lot of that baseline data we put together to look at what environmental flows might be within the water features that we had on our preserves. One of the other projects that we worked on as well related to environmental flows was the Illinois River Watershed Environmental Flows Pilot Project. TNC is part of that technical work group, and we helped develop the environmental flows for that project along with the consultants that the Water Board contracted out for that. And so many of you are familiar with this part of the state and probably familiar with the Illinois River Environmental Flows Pilot Project. So if you have specific questions, feel free to ask me whenever the presentation's done. But we were able to work with the state on that. And that's one thing that we're trying to work at more at a state level, like trying to get some environmental flows established in different parts of the state. And I'll talk about some of those here in a bit. One of the other things that we work on too that ties into why we merged it and called it more the Watershed Health Program from when we used to call it Freshwater Conservation is we're getting into working on soil health, and we're more play it like a supportive role for the Conservation Commission. We helped hire the statewide soil health coordinator. If those of you have met her, her name's Amy Seeger, and we work closely with her to really think about soil health and how that plays into watershed health and management as well. And so you can see in this graphic, you know, we incorporate the science, we look at the economy, and as well as the policy as it relates to soil health and how we all tie that back to watershed health. And one of the things we're actually working on right now with the Conservation Commission is they're looking to bring some economic case studies to the forefront so people can see what the economic benefits are to implementing soil health practices, or what a lot of people refer to as best management practices on their farms and ranches, in addition to some private lands. And so we're really wanting to think about watersheds from that whole ecosystem perspective, where we're taking into account land and water management. And one of the other things that we work on a lot too is education and outreach, whether it's participating in the Tahlequah Water Festival, this bottom left picture, just educating people in general about the critters that are in the streams, to working with folks even in an urban environment and bringing the critters to them. This was actually in Oklahoma City, this upper left-hand picture, when we could do events in person, that is, and we had a lot of people, you know, from Oklahoma City that were interested in watersheds and what we're doing and what we can do to protect them. And then also, you know, looking at the mussel diversity, this is actually a picture from the Illinois River. And so focusing in on what those species are and what we can do to protect those species. And just, you know, education alone, a lot of people don't realize what diversity actually even exists in streams in Oklahoma. And so really just bringing that to them and getting them to understand what's there. I mean, and a lot of it is, a lot of people have never spent hardly any time or even been in a stream and waded in it just to see, you know, what types of critters actually live in there. So it's just really educating the public about, you know, what diversity exists in the watersheds here in Oklahoma. And then this bottom picture was working with the Conservation Commission, where they have field days for soil health, working with local conservation districts and working with various folks to learn about land management practices and how we can incorporate soil health into that part of it. And I know some of you on this call have also heard about one of our projects that we just started within the last year, which is part of the Sustainable Rivers Program, or SRP. SRP has been in existence for about 20 years now. I think the very first project was in Kentucky on the Green River. And this is actually a joint partnership. We actually have an MOU with the Army Corps of Engineers to work on how better ways to manage reservoirs and the dam management that goes on with the Corps. And so our very first project in Oklahoma is on the Kiamichi River. We're in year 2 right now. We're actually waiting for our funding for year 2. I guess the federal budget hasn't been approved yet, but we're gonna get there. But the first year we were really looking at you know, what is the state of the science of the basin? And so Dr. Vaughn at OU has been putting that state of the science report together, and hopefully we'll have a draft here soon with that. And then what does the hydrology say? You know, what is going on within this basin in terms of the data that exists and how that can be plugged into a hydrologic model called Riverware that the Corps of Engineers uses. And I'm sure, you know, most of you are familiar with the big water unity agreement that was reached a few years ago between the state, Oklahoma City, and the tribes. And this kind of plays into all of that too, like looking at, you know, what that unity agreement entails and how that will play into our Sustainable Rivers program project. And, you know, we would like to see if we could get environmental flows, particularly maybe like seasonal flows for this stretch of the river, particularly between Sardis and Antlers. So a lot of our focus is going to be on Sardis and what the releases are out of that system. And TNC has always had a vested interest in the Kiamichi. Prior to even when I started, it's a very biologically diverse area. A lot of you on this call already know that. But we also have our Cucumber Creek Reserve, which is near the headwaters of the Kiamichi River. And so we have a vested interest in what is going on in this watershed and how we can better protect it. And so just to give you a little information on our proposal that we had for this last year and the data that we're getting ready to analyze is that, so like I said, this is a core partnership that we have, TNC does, and we've been doing this in other states for a long time now. This has just been the first project that was approved in Oklahoma, actually in April of 2020. And so we're really looking at, you know, a lot of these environmental extremes that have happened in the past decade, whether it's floods or droughts or changes in air and water temperature. We all know about the unique aquatic species and habitats. 86 fish species, 31 mussel species, which is 56% of Oklahoma's mussel fauna. And then there's also 3 federally listed mussel species within that basin. And so the Corps, I'm working with Tony Clyde, who's a limnologist with the Corps of Engineers. And so, you know, we're looking at, you know, what's going on with the hydrology and how, you know, could we make any potential operational changes to make that system better for both people and nature. And so we've been working on partnerships throughout that basin within the last year. We've had stakeholder meetings. I think we've had 6 to date. I think the last one was December 16th. And actually out of the 43 stakeholders that we identified, we actually got about half of them to show up. I mean, it was a Zoom meeting. I wish it could have been in person, but that was pretty good to get at least half of those stakeholders that we identified to actually listen to what our SRP project was and what we were hoping to gain and learn from them as well. And obviously there's been lots of ecological research. I know Dr. Vaughn has spent 30 plus years of her career in that basin. And so that's why we tasked her with being the lead on the state of the science report. And so just a little bit on the SRP program. And so our goal is to look at, are there other basin-wide efforts within that area and how we can improve the ecological integrity of that basin, like getting environmental flows established in there that's not going to detract from the water unity agreement or any existing groundwater surface water permits that are in there. And that's one thing that we're going to be analyzing with this riverware model, is looking at those current groundwater surface water permits that the water board has and how that will play into the actual flows of the system. And then, factoring in the future water withdrawal that Oklahoma City is supposed to have by 2035. One of the other areas we're also working in is the Blue River Watershed. It's part of the Arbuckle-Simpson Aquifer, and some of you may be familiar with it. It's known as a sole source aquifer. And so we, the TNC has some land with the Okinali Preserve. We have about 2 miles of the Blue River on our property. And so we do a lot of land and water management, and then in addition to protecting that, and we have some conservation easements in the area as well. And so one of the things we're looking at with this is, is this a basin where we could establish some environmental flows? And so we're working with the Chickasaw and Choctaw Nation to look at the feasibility of that, as well as their consultants to see what it would take to get environmental flows established within that watershed. And just a little bit on the Blue River. So currently 34% of the river is allocated. One of the big questions that we have is, if 100% of that river were to be allocated, right? Because just downstream is Durant, and they're a very fast growing community. They're near the Texas border. So a lot of people from Texas have moved there. It's kind of, I guess some people refer to it as like a bedroom type community. So a lot of people are moving to that area. And so it's one of the faster growing areas of the state. And so, we want to understand like what is going on in the basin, what are the different uses, could environmental flows be established, and can we work with the largest permitted surface water user, which is Durant, within that basin to see if we can get some like best management practices on the ground in the upper part of the watershed that could therefore, make the water quality and water quantity better in the Blue River. And so those are things that we're working on currently in the Blue River. So to kind of wrap up, as far as the future program, like I mentioned in the beginning, we started out like having no baseline data for any of the rivers and streams on our preserves. And we've kind of morphed into this, looking at it from a whole ecosystem approach, watershed type program. So we're going to really focus our efforts. So in those first few years, we were all over the state, but now we're really going to focus our efforts more on the Kiamichi River with the Sustainable Rivers Program project, and then the Blue River Watershed. And one of the things I forgot to mention with the Blue, we've been working with Earth Economics, which are out of near Portland, Oregon. And they look at ecosystem services. And so really looking at what those ecosystem services are within the watershed. We have a draft ecosystem service evaluation that was completed by them. And now we're looking at kind of expanding that and kind of looking at what the cultural values are, the aesthetics of this water to people. And I know that that's stuff that a lot of people don't think about is what the benefits of nature are to them, whether it's recreation or to their land value, whatever it is. And so really getting people to understand what those ecosystem service benefits are within the watershed. And we'll also continue playing a supporting role with the Oklahoma Conservation Commission on soil health, talking about why it's important and how land and water management are all connected. We'll continue our work on environmental flows, particularly in the Blue River watershed, and then seeing where we can get on the Kiamichi River watershed with SRP. And then it's just a continuing daily basis, just educating people about the importance of a healthy watershed. And I think that's all I have. If you guys have any questions, feel free, or I didn't know if you're going to save that for the end, Lauren.
I don't see any questions right now, but there might be some that come up in the end.
Okay.
Yeah. But thank you for that. That's really cool, the work the Oklahoma Nature Conservancy is doing with our water systems and outreach and soil health. That's really awesome. So our next panelist is Beth Rooney, who is the president of Spring Creek Coalition.
Okay, so I'm going to try to get a screen going, hopefully, just like Kimberly did. And I found that I could keep talking about all kinds of stuff, but I can't keep it to 10 minutes if I do that. So this has to be high level. I'm the president of Spring Creek Coalition, and this is probably my 12th year as president. And so first I wanted to show you through pictures what we're protecting. Our focus is the Spring Creek watershed, and we'd love all those things that Kimberly does, would be all fantastic. To orient you, we are, as you see the little map of Oklahoma, in Northeast Oklahoma, and I think there's a little red something there to show kind of where we're at. The Spring Creek watershed, if you've ever traveled on 412 from Tulsa over to Siloam Springs and Fayetteville, you've passed over the upper reaches of the Spring Creek watershed. And if you ever traveled from Locust Grove, it's right here, down through Peggs to Tahlequah, you've also passed through and over Spring Creek. So Spring Creek starts in a little town called Kansas, way up here, with a lot of tributaries coming together, and travels 34 miles through 3 counties, starting with Delaware up here, and flows down through the upper Cherokee County, and then takes a turn north and down through Mays County and empties into the Grand River just above Lake Fort Gibson. And we have some major tributaries, such as Snake Creek and Double Spring Creek at the Teresita area, if you know the area. And the watersheds around us to the north are Saline Creek and Savanaugh Creek. And right over here is the Illinois. You can even see it here. You just go over this ridge and drop down into the Illinois, or this way, and you drop down into Spring Creek. So that kind of orients you to where it is. And when we know that all watersheds are important, and why Spring Creek? And Spring Creek is just one of the coldest, clearest, still relatively pristine creeks, Ozark Stream, that we have in Oklahoma. For example, we're rated as a high quality water, and on the biennial, that's by Oklahoma Water Resources Board, on the biannual water assessment report from the Department of Environmental Quality, comes out every 2 years. We are often one of only a handful that receives a category 1, meaning good for all beneficial uses, such as recreation, fishing, and several others. One year we were the only one, and they sampled thousands of miles of streams and rivers and lakes. Usually we're one of 5 or 6. So we really do have a good quality of water. Not always, we don't always get a category 1, which we did. So we say that we're the most pristine large Ozark Stream left in Oklahoma. We have a lot of beautiful springs that flow in and keep the water cold and pure. But degradation has been happening all around us, mostly due to poultry farms in the upper northern regions, the influx of industrial poultry farms. And it is happening in our stream. All these pictures were just taken like on some 20 acres of property that I own or nearby on the creek. And we are not fine with that. And this little friend of mine with her watermelon in this very spot where this picture was taken. For the first time in the last 2 years, we were seeing this long green filamentous algae growing, which is a sign of too many nutrients, such as phosphorus. The Spring Creek Coalition was founded in 1994 by residents along the creek. It has grown in size. It's completely voluntary, and it does have a narrow focus mission, preservation of the Spring Creek watershed. I'm going to show you what we would normally do if we didn't have COVID, what we normally do. We have like 5 major things we do throughout the year. And then I'm going to talk to you about the 2 major things we're doing today due to the poultry farm problem. So in this time of year, right now, March, we usually do our tree planting. This was late February to help prevent stream erosion and to improve wildlife habitat. Sometime in the spring, we just about always do seminars for something related to the watershed because, as Kimberly's point, education. And the more people know, the more they care, the better stewards they are. We bring in people such as Ron Bonnet. This is not Ron, this is David Martinez introducing Ron from the University of Tulsa. And we've had seminars on geology of the area, archaeology, and every topic we can think of. We have community outings. This was a cliff hike, beautiful cliff above Spring Creek. We've had wildflower walks, and we've had, for example, visits to the Three Springs Organic Farm, which is right on Spring Creek. They sell all their produce at the Cherry Street Market in Tulsa. And in the fall, we have Kids at the Creek, which is something I really love. We rotate among the schools in the watershed, and we partner with Oklahoma Conservation Commission Blue Thumb, and here the kids are kicking in invertebrates, I believe, find them. Then fish and soil health, they've added that program, and it's a whole morning at the creek and then a hot dog cookout. So here we have some 7th and 8th graders from Peg School, and the teachers and everybody and the kids just absolutely love that. And the final big event we have typically every year is our November cleanup. And we have removed thousands of pounds of plastics and aluminum and, alas, baby diapers from the creek each year. How to prevent the trashing. In the first place, we have not conquered that. So that's what we normally do. We've done the tree planting and the cleanup, even with COVID. The poultry house invasion is our current big problem. This is a view from someone's home, Helen Wood's home, as the industrial poultry houses went in across right from her yard. Here's Helen Woods to the left. She's a widow now. She's lived there all her life. And she used to have this great pastoral view, and now this is her view. Of course, there are these mega fans here that blow out the ammonia and feathers and dust. I mean, this is really impacting the people up there. For us, it's, and then they have clean outs and they have water flowing down this way across her land and into some of the creeks. So it's a problem. And we had, you may know Pam Kingfisher, who started the Green Country Guardians so that she could get the community's voice heard. And she did a fantastic job. She held meetings, I think once a month for almost 2 years, where she brought in the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, the Department of Agriculture, just any agency she could, to hear the community's complaints and to try to get answers. But of course, little was changed. And here's another view of some of the huge fans that blow out all kinds of debris. So Spring Creek Coalition, we're thinking, what can we do for our water? Because it's coming down through our tributaries. And we came up with 2 things that we've been working on for the past couple of years. First was a monitoring program. We have chosen 6 sites And we're trying to get, just like Kimberly mentioned, a baseline of what's going on in the health of the creek. And we're the only organization that looks at the whole health of the creek. Several others, like Oklahoma Water Resources Board, tests right there, and they have for over 20 years. They have a good baseline for that one spot, but not for the whole health of the creek. And we are finding bacteria problems up here, really big ones, it seems to us, and phosphorus problems. But we're still working on our baseline. We started in July, and we will have a year's data in June. Waterkeeper Alliance, which most of you probably have heard of, a global organization that fights for clean water, developed this plan for us. We are an affiliate, and they gave us a really robust plan so that we could use this data in court if we needed to. They developed standard operating procedures and all kinds of protocols so that, you know, we're wearing gloves, we're getting it to certified labs, the data each month when we do this. We're following chain of custody. We're putting all our data out on a database. And these are the parameters that we're testing for. We have 2 bacteria, and then we have nutrients. We haven't done chlorophyll yet. And then field parameters, we take a camera and we visually, in all directions, you know, take shots each month that we go out. And from this baseline data, we're going to see what changes take place over time. Would have been better to have this baseline a few years ago, but better late than never. We have a great team. These folks love it. They care about it. They show up every month right on time. Without Lauren, 5 reminders. I've never gotten so many reminders. It's great. Don't send these guys a reminder, and they show up. And we start at one site and go to all 6, 9 a.m. until about 1 p.m. gathering water samples. Here we are in another month. This is, I think, was February. Everybody takes part. Here Dave is grabbing a sample of water. He's going to put it in these bottles that Judy's holding. She's going to put it on ice. I'm recording field data. Jennifer here is going to take the water depth. And we have a probe. Our probe is a YSI, I think it's called. Like you have a probe, Kimberly, to take the water characteristics like conductivity and pH. So this has been a really rewarding project. The not so rewarding second project that we're doing to combat the issue of the poultry houses, a lawsuit and fundraising. So 2 years ago, I don't think I've ever asked anybody for any money. And now I am a fundraiser. And we've had to raise about $50,000 for the past 2 years. And our goal for this year is another $50,000. This is our little poster put together by our little friend Maddie. And it shows our creek, and we're filling it with cold, clean water and healthy, happy creek critters as we raise up to meet our goal. We were at 13,000 at the beginning of March 1st. Our lawsuit, we actually filed it March 3rd, and it's a lawsuit against the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture. It's trying to, all they do is rubber stamp these industrial sized poultry houses, $10 and a checklist of what they're going to do, and it's approved. The laws are antiquated. They come from the time when it was just family farmers doing poultry houses. And they need to be changed. And the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture has statutes to uphold the Clean Water Act to ensure that we don't have any environmental damage or damage to people's health. And they say, you know, and then they're not upholding those standards. So we're suing the Department of Agriculture. We're not suing the farmers. We're not suing the integrators, which would be Simmons and Tyson, people like that. The lawsuit is against the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food and Forestry. right now the courts are backed up, so we don't know when this will be heard. And, you know, criminal cases take precedence over civil. So we'll see what happens to that. And so on our poster, it says stand up for water, stand up for Spring Creek. And that is my presentation. We'd love to partner with TNC even more. We do partner with TNC. We'd love to, anything that, any synergies we could have. Any questions?
Have you found, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Beth, like, are you getting any resistance to citizen science data collection?
Well, no, people are happy about it.
Okay.
Are you thinking from neighbors?
Well, no, I mean from like the state or whatever, you know, water board or any folks like that might question the validity of citizen science data.
Well, it isn't citizen science data. It goes to labs, certified labs.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, when I say citizen science, you know, it.
No, like Blue Thumb would be citizen science because, and I've been part of Blue Thumb.
Right.
This is, well, that's why we're doing so many protocols that were developed for us by Waterkeeper Alliance. Okay. And we've gotten training, and we keep track of who got trained. And we are messing up. We are rule breakers. We have a quality, I'm kind of the quality control person, and I see people, oh, no, if you fell on that rock, you've got to change your gloves, but nobody wants to do that. You know, okay. We're supposed to do that. No, we're trying to make it non-citizen science. We're trying to make it court worthy.
All right, yeah, thanks.
We've gotten some pushback from landowners when they see the amount of bacteria, and they've got a lot of cattle, and their cattle go down to the creek. Mm-hmm. And they go, oh no, it's not me, it's that lagoon up there from the town of Kansas. And they want to prove that, and we'll work with them to see where it's coming from. We don't know. And the organic farm has a lot of bacteria in their part of the creek, which is a beautiful little piece of creek. And they couldn't believe it. And they said, we swim in that all the time after we're out in the fields for a day. And it's got all that, and it's the level where people would shut down the beaches and tell people not to swim. So it was alarming. And we've got to spend some time finding where that's coming from.
So are there ways do people have to have experience at all? Are there ways for people to volunteer with the Oklahoma Nature Conservancy or with Spring Creek and sort of like get involved? Or, you know,
we've had people see us doing this monitoring and come out, and we say, okay, come on in. And then we've got to train them, and you can only have so many before it kind of gets bogged down, perhaps. But so far we haven't had too many. So that's the water monitoring, yes. Yeah, I mean, when we have cleanup days, and if they sign up for our newsletter, and when we have these cleanup days and they come out, that kind of thing. Anybody could take over our MailChimp or things like that, you know, to try to leave that burden of one person doing so many things, which is mostly me, actually, but that's the way it goes.
Cool.
You want to come out and say, I know you're doing water monitoring on the Arkansas, Lauren, and that looks really interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been fun though. So thank you for talking about Spring Creek Coalition. And I guess if anyone has any other questions, we can take them later on. The next panelist up is Rebecca Jim, who is the executive director of the LEAD agency, which is Local Environmental Action Demanded, and we'll be talking about her work and their work on Tar Creek and about LEAD agency.
Thank you very much. Well, First, I got to tell you that both the presenters before me are stars. And what would we do without them here in Oklahoma? I'm really, really proud to be lined up with you guys. It's really, really makes me very humble. I've been watching what's going on with the Spring Creek Coalition, and I had to stand up. I'm so proud about the lawsuit that you've taken forward, and looking at how we make the agriculture, Oklahoma agriculture, stand up for citizens as well as big ag. So really, you go, girl.
We hope.
It will go. You're doing everything you can do, and I'm really proud that Waterkeeper Alliance lined up with you and that you became an affiliate. I'm a member. Our lead agency is a member of the Waterkeeper Alliance, and we have two waterkeepers. We have the Grand River Keeper, and your creek flows into it. And we also have a service, the Tar Creek Keeper for Tar Creek. So I've got a few slides I wanted to show you. So let me see if I can do that. I have just a few slides in one picture. So what I'd like to show, and I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Okay. It says it's paused. Okay. How about that? Can you see that? Good. Okay, well, I can have you use your imagination. But I'll try again. Let me put it back up again.
You know, Rebecca, you have to, when you start screen sharing, then you have to click on what you want to share and then click on start sharing. I don't know if you're doing that.
Okay, I don't know. I'll try again. And if not, I don't need them. Do you?
No.
Oh, it just says it's paused. It's okay. So I will describe it to you. I'll go through them all myself. So if you stand on a little bridge in Northeast Oklahoma, and you stand and look to the north, you'll see my little creek, Tar Creek. You will see it. And it looks pretty nice. Looks like a creek. What you might expect, not nearly as nice as Spring Creek, but good. And surrounded by mountains, and those mountains are Chad. And the Chad is a mine waste loaded with heavy metals, which leach into the creek, but don't stain it. And then if you turn around and you're suddenly facing the other direction, you're facing south, you're facing just right in front of you, you'll see how my creek has been damaged so quickly. 1 million gallons of heavy metal dissolved into the water that flows down my creek. 1 million gallons a day since 1979. This water doesn't just sit there. It flows on down, and it flows through the town. It flows right by the town of Commerce, Oklahoma, and then right through the town of Miami, Oklahoma, and meets just past there the Neosho River, and then into the Grand Lake of the Cherokees. So I want to tell you a little more about where we are, since you can't tell it from where you are. We're in Northeast Oklahoma, and we are the home of 10 tribes. This area, the Neosho River, is the boundary for the Cherokee Nation, and the other tribes stacked up in a little corner of Ottawa County beginning with the Quapaws, followed by the Peoria and the Miami, the Ottawa, the Cayuga, the Wyandotte, and the Modoc. These tribes, absolutely none of them came on purpose. They did not want to come here. They came because they were forced. It was all forced removal. And every one of the tribes had their own trail of cheers. The Quapaws got the larger slice of northern Ottawa County. And when all of us faced allotment, many of those allotted lands of the Quapaw were found to have lead and zinc beneath them. That led to a mining boom, and with the largest lead and zinc mine in the world. That mine was not surface mining, but it was underground mining. And where they mined was in the Boone Aquifer. In order to allow those miners to mine that way, they had to pump that aquifer dry. And they did that for 60 years. That area was pumped dry so that the miners could work beneath the ground and not drown. These piles of the extra waste was piled above the ground. They mined and processed the ore out and produced the lead that we used in both world wars. But we also left behind enough lead to poison our children for the next 80 years. So Tar Creek, her namesake Superfund site status began in 1983 when this area was determined to be a Superfund site because of the hazard that it posed human health. Another 10 years passed before EPA recognized that it really was damaging human health when they discovered 34% of our Indian children were lead poisoned. EPA really didn't believe it was that bad. They figured it was citizen science and somebody at Indian Health didn't know what they were doing and wasn't believed. But when EPA came back in, they did find that each of the towns in Northeast Oklahoma had percentages of children that were lead poisoned. So that generated an effort to come and figure out how do they deal with that exposure. When you've got piles and piles of that mine waste, how do you deal with it? They began an action when EPA does work on a Superfund site. They divide up that work in operable units. Operable Unit 1 was to do something about the creek. Well, the action they tried didn't work, and they left anyway. They only came back to us for an OU2 when they found that our children were lead poisoned. When they came back, they began to look at front yards, backyards, and measuring the level of lead in those yards. They discovered that sure enough, many of them were loaded with lead, and so they began a process of digging up yards and removing them, putting in clean dirt and protecting children. They have lowered lead levels in children by doing this, but they have still done nothing to fix that eternal flow of evil flowing down Tar Creek every day. We found that the children playing in their sandboxes, many of those sandboxes were full of lead that fathers had brought home from the mine waste to put in their own children's playgrounds. That kicked us off as an organization to figure out how do we bring enough manpower to get EPA to do something about the people that lived in the epicenter of this area, that were living with chat piles all around them. How do we get those people moved out? So we did a project called the Tooth Fairy Project, where we collected teeth from children and other adults. We had 4-year-olds all the way up to 80-year-olds who had donated teeth. We sent them to the Harvard School of Public Health to have them analyzed. That's citizen science, where you are working together as a community to find the answers that you need. That brought in the Harvard School of Public Health to do a major research with our babies. And so they did a birth cohort here and discovered that our children were already poisoned at birth. They were poisoned by their mothers, for their mothers having lived here, grown up here, and stored their own lead in their bones, and then poured that back out to their babies as their babies were growing. When they didn't have enough calcium in their own system, our bodies think lead is calcium and pulls it out for those fetuses. So I was a high school counselor at the time and organized a group of students called the Cherokee Volunteer Society, because we receive a little funding from Cherokee Nation to do service learning. Those students took on Tar Creek, and they wanted to understand what on earth they could do. And so they couldn't do what Beth was doing. They couldn't go out and take those samples themselves because the water was too contaminated for them. And they were still developing brains. So, and they couldn't go out and get close to the stream and plant trees. So what they could do was educate each other. And so they talked to little children about what children can do to protect themselves from lead. And that was really learning to wash their hands. So a very big responsibility put on 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds to try to protect themselves by learning to wash their hands. Those high school students began a process of hanging up signs all around the Superfund site, because actually all their peers were using those piles for recreation. They were playing on them. They were taking their 4-wheelers out and running up and down them. They were taking sleds out and sledding on them at different times of the year. So they were worked with the Bureau of Indian Affairs to post signs all throughout the Quapaw grounds, all their tribal lands that were held in trust by the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Department of Interior. They worked with the health department and lead agency in posting signs in every single public bathroom. They should wash their hands. They took on notifying their parents that we should have our yard tested. We want a clean yard ourselves. They did a campaign to get lead-free yards all over the Ottawa County. And because of their efforts, the whole Superfund site is now the whole county. Every single yard in Ottawa County can be sampled for lead and can have it removed because of their actions. And then they looked at how come they can't have community gardens? Why can't they have sustainable food? So we worked with the Boys and Girls Club to try to begin doing some of that work. And you couldn't do it unless your yard was clean. And so we had to make sure that the yards they worked in were clean. We partnered with artists, and we partnered with poets. Some of those people were our own homegrown, and others were some that came in afterwards. So we partnered with Kathy Berger-Kay and Philip Cousteau to do a book called Going Blue, a teen guide for saving our ocean, lakes, and rivers and wetlands. Each of the chapters in that book starts out with the work that our kids at Tar Creek did to notify others. They published books. They wrote their own books. They did anthologies. They inspired, they and the citizens here inspired a full-length movie, actually two. One is called Tar Creek and the other is called A Creek Runs Red. The efforts that we did has inspired an off-Broadway, two off-Broadway plays. One Misled, and the other The Picture Project, which is actually a musical. So all of that matters for a site as small as ours in a small corner of Oklahoma that needs attention and doesn't always get what they need. So we want people to speak up. And if you ask me what you could do for us, you could help us get that message out, that there are many, many mining sites throughout the United States and all over the world. And we want to keep that stuff in the ground because actually we're not smart enough to know how to deal with the waste afterwards. We don't know how to clean up a single one of these mine sites. So it's pristine afterwards. We're ruining creek after creek and we want no more tar creeks. We want none. And every single tribe that is approached by mining companies should shutter the doors and don't let them in. They don't know how to clean up after themselves, not like we learned in kindergarten, you know. But we need to let our young people know these are our issues and our issues are huge. They can speak out and adults can't. For us, we need Superfund to be reauthorized so polluters pay this tax and it's not coming out of our pockets. And we don't have to depend on our Senator Inhofe, your Senator Inhofe, to be the senator that tags something on to an amendment that will fund another process here for us. That same senator has a lake home where our Tar Creek water ends up in front of. He's also put an amendment in the National Defense Act, Authorization Act, that will actually raise the Grand Lake of the Cherokee 2 more feet, which will back our Tar Creek up and flood more areas in this community, these communities up here, and let our metals land on more front yards and backyards than ever have before. So our issues are big. We're a Superfund site the size of Tulsa. We're big. EPA is not done well with us. They've not done all they could, but they will. And we're going to continue speaking up and organizing and love you to know more about our site. Generally, we have a national conference every year, and we'll have some version of that come September, and we'll get the word out so you can join us in some way. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, boy, we're loaded.
Cool, thank you. I learned a lot about Tar Creek from that, and yeah, I guess if anyone was interested in like getting involved with like helping
Hey,
out
if
with,
she's hopping off right away, she didn't stop sharing, or unless you can control that.
Okay, I'm stopping.
There we go.
Yeah. And I do have to pop off and I'll come back in a bit.
okay,
Thank you very much for allowing me to share this.
thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
All right, so up next we have a group of high school students from the AP Environmental Science class at Owasso High School, and they're working with their teacher, Shannon Chatwin, and we'll be talking about their project about water for Sierra Leone, Africa.
All right, we're gonna share
Yeah,
our
share.
screen.
Yeah, just tell me when to.
Can you see it? Yes, all right.
Yes.
All right, where's the present now button? Doo-doo-doo-doo. All right, do you see it? Hold on, we're looking for the present now button. It's usually over here. Let me see. Da-da-da-da.
I think it's in the top right corner next
Well,
to the
usually, oh, that,
There it
that's,
is.
all right, it's
Okay.
covered by the speaker thing, that's why. There we
There we
go.
go. Okay.
There we go.
Great. Okay. They can see it?
Can you see it, guys?
It's loading? Okay.
it's loading.
Dun, 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 dun. Lauren, go ahead and have it pulled up on your end, just in case for whatever technical goodies. There it goes, hooray. Okay,
So we are from Owasso High School. We are an AP environment. We are AP environmental science students, and we will be talking about wells for Sierra Leone, Africa today. We are partnering with the African Center for Business and Education to help build wells in Africa. And we're going to introduce ourselves and we're going to show you a brief video. I'm Kristen.
I'm Olivia.
I'm Remy.
I'm Bailey.
All right. We're going to show you a video from the African Center for Business Education to help build wells in Africa.
Oh, no.
there it is.
There we go. Okay.
The lack of clean water
Can you guys hear it?
in sub-Saharan
Yes.
Africa, in which about 60% of the populations that live in rural sub-Saharan Africa do not have access to clean water to drink. That's the problem.
Thursdays are a good day, but, yeah, I don't have anything usually scheduled on Thursdays.
So that's another position.
Well, what are you talking about early?
We partnered
I think I do later,
educators,
anytime like.
Tulsa, Oklahoma area
1:30.
to construct
Okay.
boreholes in rural Sierra Leone where I grew up.
Amazing. Sounds good. Oh. Okay, do things open up? I mean, why?
In order to provide clean drinking water
Yeah. Uh-huh, okay. So I could possibly.
Lauren, can you mute whoever's talking?
You open up? I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
for the populations in the area.
Began to change when Dr. Clara started working with the environmental science class at high school. What an inspiring opportunity to show these kids that they are part of a community, and what they're learning can be applied in such a practical and profound and kind way. About a year ago, Dr. Kumar had visited hear his story and research them. But more importantly, he shared his passion for water conservation. I was a senior at the time, and I remember feeling almost hopeless, knowing that this water crisis affects thousands of people in their societies, their health, education, sanitation, economics, their entire livelihood. And we were a class all the way over here wanting to help, but don't have the philanthropist fund. So our class set up a GoFundMe page to raise money to build wells in Sierra Leone.
Children are tasked to bear the burden. They have to walk miles, go up hills, down valleys to fetch water to bring to their families. Girls especially. They have to miss school, or they're late to class. Because before they go to school, they have to make sure that that water is home before they are allowed to go to school.
Teachers at our school became involved in this project, not only because we have a natural affinity to want to help children, but also because when we build these wells, it's going to free up time for those children to actually attend school. So what better way for a group of teachers to show how much they value education to provide the needs for more kids to go to school.
40 years ago, I was drinking contaminated water. We go to swamp and get water, and bring food to our families. We allow water to settle down, the mud to settle at the bottom of the container, then we scoop water to drink. In 2019, when I went back 40 years after, the same product exists.
Sierra Leone is our first well location. It's not only a way to provide safe and clean drinking water, but also a way to honor to ensure that future generations and children in Sierra Leone have a much story to tell about their children.
So all we asking is support our efforts by donating whatever you can to provide clean drinking water for children, for families, women, sub-Saharan African people.
I never felt more motivated to fundraise for something. Because typically our school fundraises to pay for class trips or newer books, things that we would all benefit for ourselves. To raise support that would directly better the health and education of other students, and not to mention the entire society. I would definitely sell cookie dough or magazines for that, all of it. By Water for Sierra Leone, me and my classmates will continue to find new ways to educate, inspire, and hopefully one day succeed.
All right. Just a second, we're trying to figure out how to go
Up at the top bar up there.
Yeah,
where.
the top bar.
Yeah, so all your tabs are up there, so you can
Yeah,
get-
we just need to go back to the slides tab.
Where is, oh, no.
yeah, it's in those tabs.
Yeah. It's just being
Oh,
blocked
it's
by
the,
the.
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, we're heading back there.
All right, there we go. There we go.
Okay, go ahead and you guys can start talking. And, all right, next page.
Okay, so this is a map that shows where we are. So the point where it is in North America, that's about where we are in Owasso, Oklahoma. And then the other one shows where Yonibana, Africa is, which is the village that we are attempting to build the first well in. It is in Sierra Leone, which is West Africa. There's 4,000 people there. And like I said, this is where we want to build our first well. We're going to kind of go over some of the human costs and benefits of this well as some environmental benefits that can come from us constructing this well. We're also going to talk about different types of wells that we could possibly build and what sort of costs monetary wise are associated with those wells. So this is a quote from the United Nations from January 2nd of 2019. Says that access to clean water and sanitation is a basic human right, and it affects our health and safety. We need safe water to drink every day, and we need adequate sanitation facilities to ensure that everyone has the ability to attend school or work and is protected against sexual assault. And we need to manage the flow of wastewater safely to protect our fragile ecosystems, but we have a long way to go. Human water use has also increased twice as fast as the population grows. It's at 170,544 gallons per person per year, which is a lot of water.
UN water expert Brian Appleton in the early 2000s said over 5,000 children die needlessly every day from waterborne illnesses. That's equivalent to 12 full jumbo jets crashing, which is 660 per jet today. Every day, he says. If 12 full jumbo jets were crashing every day, the world would want to do something about it. They want to find out why it was happening. Every hour, 600 people die because their water supplies are contaminated, inadequate, or non-existent. And the health of many of those who survive is often permanently damaged. There are some issues that stem from not having clean water 2 hours a day for the water collection. 8.35 pounds of water, less 10%.
The buckets of water, a gallon, it weighs 8.35 pounds, and these children have to walk 2 hours a day to make the whole trip just to bring that contaminated water back to their families. And that means they have less time for school. When the women do it, they have less time to work in the household, which leads to less income, which adds to the poverty problem in the country.
So these are some ecological benefits. About 2/3 of water carried in rivers and streams every year occurs in seasonal floods that are too large or violent to be stored or trapped effectively for human use. That is how it is in Sierra Leone. A typical poor family uses only 1/6 of the water we use in the US, but pays 3 times more. If they followed government recommendations to boil all water to prevent cholera, up to 1/3 would be used to acquire and purify water. With a pump well, children don't venture into the forests or wash clothes and contaminate the streams. This allows local flora and wildlife to flourish.
And the Bangaya River, which is the river that the people of Leone get their water from, it's contaminated. So not only are they drinking unclean water, they're also damaging the environment because of the lack of wells that they have. If we built the wells, not only would we be protecting the health of the people in Yoni Bana, we would also be protecting the health of the ecosystem of the Bangaya River. This is important because stream flow is critically changing as the climate gets warmer and evaporation and transpiration increases. This graph demonstrates change in the annual stream flow with the 2 degrees Celsius increase in global temperatures. Notice that Africa is purple, which according to the graph's key shows it is at the highest risk of this issue. You will notice that much of Africa does not have improved drinking water in rural areas. Today, about 4.5 billion people lack effective safety managed sanitation services, and about 2.5 billion people, 36% of the world's population, live in water scarce regions. This is mainly in rural Africa. These improved water sources would include things like tube drilled and sealed wells and just piped and treated sources.
Yeah.
My colleague will be discussing this further.
All right, just going down to the next slide. So we have 3 types of wells that we're aiming for. So your hand pump wells, those are $2,500 each in our money. Those are the normal wells that you would find like at a campsite where you just hand pump the water out. Submersible wells, these are more of a automated system. So you have it in a body of water. And so it's powered by that. And so you can just turn the knob and water will come out. And then there's our more expensive well, which is our solar well. It has a 200-gallon storage tank. And it's similar to the submersible well, but it's using solar power to drive up the water from the ground. So where you can just turn a knob and get the water out and just bring it to your families. And it's pretty cool. So yeah. So we have donation sites and websites for information. It's acb.org.
ACEB.
So acb.org and secure.actblue.com.
Any amount would help, and we are sponsoring a walkathon, as you will see on the websites. So if you are interested in participating, there is more information listed there. Please help us raise enough money to buy a well for Yonibana and Sierra Leone.
All right, and here's a few words from my mother.
My teacher.
All right, so real quick, and then these guys will field questions right behind me and such. I feel that it's important that we need to develop the education of youth. We need to include youth in health and environmental risks and thinking about them with people of all nations and perspectives. So I believe the key is to start doing outreach events like the funding for a well in Sierra Leone to get young students to learn and care about the environment in other countries, and that the health of all people is important and translates to the improved health of the environment and local waterways all over the world. Our band at Owasso High School has a saying, 1 mind, 1 mission, 1 heart. And that's where we need to be, is 1 mind, 1 mission, 1 heart. And I want to thank everybody for coming.
So do we have any questions?
We have time for a few quick questions, if anyone has any questions before going on to our next speaker. So it doesn't look like there's any questions. So thank you for talking about your water project, and that's really cool what you all are doing, what you're trying to do. And I guess, is there a good, can anyone get involved with your water project?
Yes, there's information on the website on ways you can get involved. And even just by donating, you're already helping the cause very much.
Cool.
Even spreading the word.
Yeah, just even spreading the word. If you can't really donate anything, maybe like sharing the website's link and just kind of getting more information out there, because it's very like unknown, the water crisis going on in Africa. I mean, like 10 countries in Africa make up around 2/3 of the world's population that does not have access to clean water. And that's not a very commonly known fact.
Well, thank you. Thank you for talking about your project. And our last panelist for today is, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, Mina Guli, who is in Australia. And I think actually, oh, wait. Oh, hi.
Hey, Lauren.
Yeah, okay, cool. There we go. We're good. So, did I say your name correctly? Mina Guli?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
People call
So,
me all kinds of things, so that's a very polite way of saying it. All good.
okay, cool. So Mina is a water advocate and ultra runner, which is really cool that you can do ultra runs. And she's a recognized global leader fighting to avert the world's water crisis. So I guess we just had the World Water Run that finished, and from your post, I saw that there was enough mileage covered to run around the world 8 times. That's awesome. So what inspired you to start the World Water Run?
So it's actually a really good question, Lauren, and thank you for participating and doing some miles and encouraging everyone to get involved. And thank you for being country captain. I was watching all your posts and your runs, very awesome. So it's kind of like the whole running thing is a bit crazy for me because I don't think of myself as a runner. Actually, I don't enjoy running, even though I've run in some of the most extreme places on the planet, like Antarctica, this picture behind me, running, and the Amazon and all kinds of places. And it struck me, the more places I've run, the more I've seen on the ground stories about the water crisis, the challenges that people are facing, standing on the banks of the Aral Sea, having literally run across an ocean that used to be the 4th biggest inland ocean in the world and is now less than 10% of its size, running through the old shipping boats that are marooned in that old lake, having my hand held by the women that talk to me about what it's like to no longer have the ability to put their products on a ship and sail it across to the other side of the ocean and access the Silk Road, or women and children who say to me, actually, this is a much bigger, deeper issue than you can possibly imagine. So all of those moments brought me to the kind of question of, well, why are we failing to act so badly? Why is it that our water community has been beset by silos? Why is it that, the water and sanitation people don't talk to the ecosystem people, don't talk to the transboundary issue, to the transboundary people? Because here's the deal. Water doesn't come from a tap. Water comes from an ecosystem, and an ecosystem runs across many countries. In many cases, it's transboundary. There is no part of the water cycle that exists in isolation. And so I'm like, it's time for us as a water community to stand up and unite together and say our one common issue is we actually need to close the gap on SDG 6. We need to go from where we are now, which is so far off track. I've spoken at UN events and I've talked to government leaders, company leaders, policy people, NGOs. We all agree we are off track from achieving what we need to on SDG 6. And we need to close the gap between where we are today and where we need to be 10 years from now. We cannot afford a planet where there's a 40% gap between the demand for water and the supplies of water available. We cannot afford a country a community, let alone a planet where 40% of our world's population live in conditions where there's not enough water, where the risk is that 700 million people get displaced, where just in 2018, companies reported $38 billion of corporate water losses. This is ridiculous. We need to unite together. So I said, what if we said to our world, let's get together and step up for change? What if we put out a challenge and we said, let's unite our planet around this one issue? And so we put out a note, as you know, and said, hey, everybody, let's stand up for water. It's time. And let's try and unite the world by running around it. And so we did. And we ran not only once around, we ran around the world 8 times. Thousands and thousands of people from over 132 different countries running around this precious world to show how much we care about water. So that was the motivation behind it. Many miles and much thinking and much desire to unite our community around this issue.
Awesome. That's awesome. And I've seen on your website too about invisible water. So what is invisible water and why is it important that we know about it?
So most people, like when I started my journey in water, I'll be really honest, like I'm from Australia, so we grew up through 10 years of drought. So it was very familiar to me to be taking buckets of water out from the shower and putting it on the garden, turning off the tap when we brush our teeth, taking short showers, always had shower timers in the shower. I kind of thought, look, I'm a pretty good water saver. I know not to waste it. Until I realized that actually the water that I was looking at, the water that was coming out of my tap, represents an extremely small part of the water that I actually use every single day. So if you think about like our water footprint, it's really tempting to just think it's the water you drink, it's the water you shower in. But invisible water is all the rest of the water that goes into everything we use, we buy, and we consume every single day. So from the food that you guys ate, you probably had a nice lunch. I'm going to have my breakfast soon. Cups of coffee, the clothes that we wear, the energy that goes into powering the computer I'm talking to you guys on. All of those things take heaps and heaps of water. And if you just think, just as an example, just what I'm wearing today, like sweater, t-shirt, pants, shorts, all of those things, just one outfit took more water to make than all the water I drink before I'm 40 years old, just one outfit. And the issue and the challenge for us as a planet is not just the one outfit that each one of us owns, but it's the growing population and a growing demand for more products that want and need more water to be produced. And that is causing a massive, massive stress on our existing water supplies. So I think that, it's tempting when we think about challenges like water to think, oh, it's so far away, there's nothing I can do. Or, okay, I can raise money for a well like the guys were just talking about now, which is such an epic, amazing project. And I have to tell you, I've been to some of these communities where wells have been built, and I've seen the impact that it has on people's lives, especially on women and children who all of a sudden are safe enough to go to the well that's only a couple of 100 meters away, and as opposed to literally scratching in the water, in the ground. I've seen kids, tiny little kids, scrabbling in the dirt to try to access water because that's the only water supply they have. Heartbreaking. So there's a certain amount of that we can do, but there's a whole bunch of other things that we can say. We are connected to water through our supply chains, through our invisible water, through making smart choices about the food that we eat or the things that we drink or the clothes that we choose to put on our backs. This connects us to water in ways that we don't normally think about, and gives us, every single one of us, the power to make a decision, to make an impact with our choices.
Awesome. Yeah, because I really hadn't thought about invisible water until I had seen some of your stuff on it. I was like, that's a really good point, considering the water that we really don't think about. So in your opinion, and with what you've seen so far, what would you consider to be the most concerning aspects of the global water crisis?
Yeah. Apart from the fact that we have one and we shouldn't have one and we probably don't need to have one, apart from that small thing, I for me, actually, the biggest, most concerning aspect of the whole crisis is this element of water blindness. We are completely blind to the nature and extent of the water crisis. While climate change and deforestation makes front page news, our wetlands are disappearing 3 times faster than our forests. Why are we not talking about this? Why are we not talking about the fact that 10 years from now, 10 years, most of us can remember where we were 10 years ago, thinking 10 years into the future, 10 years from now, 700 million people could be displaced. This is not a minor issue. This is a major problem facing all of us everywhere. And it's not something we can pack up into a little box and put onto the top shelf of a closet and go, we can deal with it later. We have to deal with it right now, because it's going to impact all of us in ways we can't possibly imagine. Our supply chains, our communities, our societies, our economies. When I ran in South Africa, we went to a town about 4 hours outside of Cape Town. It's called Beaufort West. I had set out about a month and a half beforehand to run 100 marathons in 100 days, to try to, well, to really to show what it means to be 100% committed to something, anything at all. But in my case, obviously water, because it's the thing that I care about more than anything. And so we'd had these amazing experiences. RLC, we'd seen water innovation and technology in Israel. It's like a bunch of different stories, but nothing prepared me for sitting on the back of a water truck to get dropped off at the start of my run, and then spending my run carrying 10-liter containers of water. You guys are in America, so they're like massive containers of water, super heavy. Carried those containers and gave it to kids who were standing by their gates, stayed home from school, waiting for the government water supply truck to be delivered, because it was the only way they could get water, because their towns had run dry. When we took off from the street and I looked back over my shoulder, fights were breaking out because people realized there wasn't enough water to go around. This is a major problem, and it's not going to go away on its own. It's going to take all of us everywhere to unite to solve it. And the first step in that is actually curing water blindness. It's about saying, how can we get water onto the top of the agenda for companies and policymakers and investors? How do we get water onto conversations over a dinner table? How do we get conversations where, projects like, making a well for people in Sierra Leone isn't something you have to fight for. It's something that people are working together to provide the funding and support to actually make that happen. And I think for me, the biggest challenge is if we can get to the point where people understand that we have a major water problem, it's urgent, it extends far beyond drinking water, far into supply chains, and we need to act on that problem now. If we can fix that, what I call water blindness, then we'll move a substantial distance forward to actually solving the problem. And look and listen and see. And I think, water is everything, but we treat it as if it's nothing. And the time for that to change is right now.
Yeah, definitely. That's so like, kind of shocking to hear that and think about it. And I know in the US, at least in Oklahoma, where I'm in, we have agencies like we had the Oklahoma Nature Conservancy speak earlier about their efforts with their sustainable rivers program that they're doing, and just trying to promote the importance of water and keep our water system sustainable, and hopefully extend that to drinking water. And hopefully we'll start getting more people involved about water blindness and understanding that. And I guess kind of if you could speak a little bit to your backstory and kind of what inspired you to start the Thirst Foundation and how you actually ended up getting into water advocacy and doing what you do now.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird story, because if you'd asked me when I was your age if I'd be doing this, I would have just laughed my head off, right? Because when I was a kid, I was like a really fat kid. I hated sport. I was never picked for a sports team. I was like the one, you know, when you turn up at sport and they're like, yeah, we'll have you and you and you. And they look at me and go, oh, so humiliating. And I had a really bad accident actually when I got to university, and the doctors told me I wouldn't be able to run again. And at the time, all my friends were like, high five, yeah, awesome. You always wanted an excuse to sit on the couch and eat pizza. And I was like, yeah, now I've got an excuse. I kind of don't want it. Actually, I don't want someone else to determine what I can and can't do. And so I said, right, I'm going to show everybody else and myself that we're all capable of doing whatever we set our minds to. I truly believe you don't have to be anyone to be someone. And I was like, right, I'm going to step up for change and make this happen. So I started swimming and then biking and then running. And the more I ran, the more I realized that actually I'm really bad at it. I'm really slow, embarrassingly slow actually. But anyway, and I realized that it's kind of every time I stepped up to the starting line, every time I took a step forward, it's a bit like, you know, you never know if you're going to be able to finish. You never know if you're going to be able to do the challenge that you've set out. But the most important thing is to start. And the most important thing is to step up with the best of intentions and the best of preparation, and then just take one step at a time forward. And I think for me, there's a big part of that thinking that needs to be applied to the water crisis. Do we know for sure that we can solve it? No. Do we think we can if we all pull together and unite to make it so? Yes. Do we think that if we all stand on that starting line together, united in the place that we're going to go, we can actually make this happen together? Definitely. Is it about taking small steps as part of making a bigger change? 100%. So that's kind of my running story. Since then, of course, I've run like some crazy things. I ran across 7 deserts on 7 continents in 7 weeks. Crazy. I ran 40 marathons in 40 days down 6 of the world's great rivers, like the Amazon and the Nile, and the Colorado, your own river. And then I tried to run 100 marathons in 100 days. And there's a whole story behind that too. But I think, you know, the water part of my kind of life has been a common ribbon throughout. And I didn't realize it until after I'd had several careers as an entrepreneur, an investor. I was running an investment fund. I thought my big purpose in life was climate change. Don't tell the climate change people. And until I realized problem, but climate is the place we're going to get bitten first. You see the water crisis, we're really doing something about it. There's plenty of people talking about climate. There's plenty of people walking on the street about climate. There's plenty of conversations on the front page of the newspaper about climate, but where is water? And so I said, well, I'm going to do something about this. And I think, you know, if I look back, there are kind of probably 2 turning points. The first one was I sat on the stage at the World Economic Forum moderating a conversation with the global chairman of Nestle, talking about water, talking about this idea of invisible water, impact on supply chains, impact on businesses and communities and economies. And I thought to myself, I've got this whole water thing all wrong. I'm thinking about it like a bucket. Actually, it's like an ocean of a problem. And it's going to impact all of us everywhere. It's going to impact your lives. You will not be able to live the life you want if you can't get access to water, to food, to energy, to anything, because we've run out of water. And so I said, this is crazy. We need to do something about it. Water should be on the front page. I will make it go on the front page. So I started Thirst. I wanted to educate the next generation of consumers about water, and particularly about their connection to it through invisible water. I wanted them to get that aha moment of looking at a pair of jeans or a t-shirt or a cup of coffee or a tea and going, yes, I can make a difference. And so we educated, I started Thirst in China, educating kids, and we educated a couple of million kids across China. And I realized this is really amazing and impactful, but we need faster, bigger change than this. And so we, okay, so I've got some crazy friends, and one of my friends said, you need to do something completely crazy to capture the world's imagination, because people are blind to the problem. You need to make them see. Go to the places where there are problems with water and tell their story. But you can't just go, by the way, because that's really boring. So what you should do is do something extreme. What could you do? I'm like,
I don't know, look at me like I'm incompetent. I can't do anything. And he's like, Mina, I am a wise person. Anyone can do anything. Let's just think of something. Why don't you go run? I'm like, because I'm not a runner. Like, really? Anyway, somehow I'm thinking I'm not a runner. I can't do this. And my mouth is going, yeah, that's a great idea. So I go run in, 7 deserts, 7 continents, 7 weeks. I do the rivers and I get to 100 marathons. So that's kind of where this started. Every time I went out to meet the communities and talk to people, I realized how big and how deep the water problem runs. And I think, so that was kind of my first moment. Second moment was I was running across the Richtersveld Desert in the northern part of South Africa. It runs between Namibia and South Africa. There's a river that bisects this Richtersveld Desert. It's called the Orange River, and it provides sustenance to thousands of people in the northern part of South Africa. And it's beautiful. One day I knew we had to cross the river, so we went down to the river, and there's a big barge. We were supposed to put the car onto the support vehicle onto the barge. And as we got down, the guys were in front of us going, no, you have to stop, turn around, go back. I'm like, we just ran like a couple of 100 kilometers. Going back is really a tough option here. We have to go across the river. And I said, the problem is the river is so low. The river has dropped in the last 6-7 years the same number of meters. So you can see a high water mark like 6 meters above where we're standing on the riverbank, where the water should be. And I said to them, is the drought that bad? And they said, no, it's not a drought problem. It's a water management problem. We're using water to grow grapes all along the riverbank. And these are table grapes getting put onto the backs of trucks and driven like 9-10 hours to the nearest port to get exported out. And I thought to myself, far out, how many times have I got a little bag of grapes? I love my grapes. So how many times have I got my bag of grapes and got to the bottom and gone, oh, it's a bit brown, a bit squidgy, don't really want to eat that, and just thrown it out? I don't even think about the consequences to people's lives and workloads and communities of providing me with this food that I'm eating. That's, you get a sign on it saying made in South Africa, or, made in India, or made in Bangladesh, or made in China. And we don't realize that connects us to their water problems. And as I stood on that riverbank waiting for them to go find a kayak so I could literally kayak across, because obviously we couldn't get the car over, I thought to myself, this is so wrong. This is so fundamentally wrong. And what's even worse is that we're doing nothing about it. So I stood on that riverbank and I said, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. There is no going back. There is only forward. We need to change how we think about water. We need to do something about it. And I think, Lauren, you've probably had moments like this where you think, wow, this is a moment that's going to define who I am for the rest of my life. And am I up to that challenge? And I think at these points, when we're confronted by these questions, we have to ask ourselves, that old thing, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? And for me, that was my moment, standing beside that river in the Richtersveld Desert in South Africa. And I said, this is it. This is my mission for life, to solve this problem.
Wow, that's really inspiring. That's really awesome, and that's really awesome that you've been committed to doing this. And I'm fairly new with the whole water advocacy stuff. I started last year, and really, because I don't want to say enjoyed it, because I don't enjoy water crises, but I at least it was something I became very interested in, and was looking to do more in. And I guess relaying off of that, what is some advice you would give to aspiring water advocates? And even how can people, like, no matter what age or where they are in life, like, how could they get involved in addressing the global water crisis?
Yeah, so I'm gonna I've actually got 3 things that I've thought about this, right? So I've got 3 things. But before I get to that, I think there are 2 other challenges that it's easy to overlook. So first of all, we've talked a bit about it, but whenever you're looking at a big crisis, it's easy to think it's someone else's problem. Someone else will deal with this. Someone else can deal with climate change or plastics or oceans or water. And I think it's really important for all of us to understand that this is not something that just affects other people, it affects us too, right? We've talked about supply chains, invisible water. We've talked about how important that is. The second is that it's very easy to think, I'm just one person, what can I really do? Like, really? And I was a fat little kid from Australia. Like, how on earth could I possibly have thought I can do something to solve this massive global crisis? And I want to just reiterate that it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, you can make an impact. I started running 100 marathons in 100 days. I got to marathon number 62. I knew I had a problem with my body because I'd watched it deteriorate over 62 marathons. I was trying to run in 20 different countries. We'd carefully organize these countries based on the water stories that they had to tell. Obviously, it's why I go to all these places, including Antarctica and everywhere else, because I want to tell these water stories. And by the time we got to marathon number 62, I'd gone from running to walking to hobbling to literally not being able to run. Day 63, we did not go to run. We went to the hospital and I was diagnosed with a massive fracture in my leg. When the doctors told me that I could not run anymore, I was devastated. I felt like my world had completely ended. I sat in that wheelchair in the hospital in Cape Town and all I could see was blackness. But sometimes from dark moments, great things come. And the first thing that happened was my team came in and they said to me, Mina, this is a crisis that's much bigger than you. This is something that affects all of us everywhere. Today we're going to go and we'll run your miles for you. And on day 63, I watched from my wheelchair as my team went out and ran my miles for me. On day 64, people across Cape Town joined them. On day 65, people around the world stepped up to run for water. And by the time we finished, we've run thousands and thousands of kilometers. At that stage, we had 50 countries and territories around the globe who joined us. And since then, we've been running together. We've sweated for soap. We've done plogathons, picking up plastic out of waterways. And as you said, and as you participated in, Lauren, just recently, we did our World Water Run, where we had even more people and even more countries, 132 countries, thousands and thousands of people, 8 times around our planet. I'm just one person. But, sometimes someone said to me at the end of my campaign, individually, we can make an impact, but together we can change the world. So never think that just being one person means that you can't deliver meaningful change. Any one of us is capable of greatness. Any one of us is capable of stepping up and making an impact. So think that there are three things to remember. Never let anyone tell you never. Most important, the only person to set limits on what we can and can't do is us. The more we listen to, oh, that's not the way things are done. Oh, that's not the way, the way that our parents and our grandparents did things before us might have been great, but they're not great for now. If they worked, we wouldn't have the problems that we've got. We need to do things differently. We need to be boldly optimistic. We need to have an unwavering commitment to actually making an impact. And we need to be openly curious about finding solutions. So first thing, never let anyone tell you never. The second is that remember that you never have to be anyone to be someone. Any one of us can step up for change. You don't have to have connections, have influence, all of these things you can build. If you have purpose and passion and you're willing to persevere, you can do anything. And the third one is that change is truly about community. Change is about recruiting others to your cause. It's about leaning on your friends. It's about building teams. Remember the saying, individually you can make an impact, but together, if you want to change the world, together we can change the world. So I think, Lauren, I feel like I've downloaded a whole lot of stuff on you guys, but you know, I've spent a lot of time out there thinking. I've spent a lot of time seeing and talking to women, girls, children, parents, policymakers, investors, CEOs, people across the world. And the one thing I know is that when we awaken and when we solve this water blindness, when we actually start to put water onto the agenda, people move. But the only way we do that is by people like you, people who are willing to step up, people who are willing to put their hand up and say, this might be uncomfortable. Running might not be my favorite thing. Running might be hard. Making change might be hard. Life is hard. But the reality is when we step up together and we bring and unite our community, magic happens. And I think that is the power that lies in the hands of every single one of us. Water is everything. We treat it as if it's nothing. Every one of us has the power to help us to see that we can make water something.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining in. And I guess if anyone has any questions before we wrap this up, I do not see. I'm on Facebook too, like watching comments. So, so I don't see.
I love it. Multitasking, Lauren. It's
Yeah,
excellent.
Yes.
Another super talent. You're not just a runner. You're not just a mobilizer. You're not just a water advocate. You can also do all of those things at the same time.
Yeah, gotta keep track of those questions.
Lauren, someone said to me once, it's not what the future holds, but who holds the future. And I think that if the future is in the hands of people like you, we're going to be okay.
Thank you. That means a lot. Coming from you. So yes, thank you to everyone who came out for the Water Conservation Sustainability webinar. It was really inspiring to hear how different agencies in Oklahoma, different high school groups, and even globally all the way in Australia with the Global Water Advocate, how there's multiple ways to get involved for our water systems and what research and initiatives are being done to conserve and protect and keep water sustainable, and hopefully will continue to be sustainable even with the changes that we're experiencing now. So I hope everyone had fun, and I hope people also enjoyed it. And thank you for coming out and for listening and for being part of it.
Lauren, what Facebook is this on? What Facebook page?
It's on my profile page, but it's public, so it should be shareable. At least I tried to make it share. It should be shareable. And it's also being recorded, so I can send a link too.
Lauren, I'm going to make a request because we've got another run coming up in June where we're going to run for our rivers. Okay. So please, everybody, keep an eye on you can look at at the moment it's my website. We're building a separate one, but it's minaguli.com. It's minaguli.com. And we'll put up all the information when it becomes available. But it'd be awesome if you guys would all consider stepping up to run for our rivers.
Yeah, definitely. I think there'd be a good group in Oklahoma who would do that. Yeah.
Lauren, I'm leaving that one in your hands, superstar. You can hustle and rustle people together.
We'll have a huge team. It'll be great. We'll have
a
huge team. It'll start planning right now. So yeah. I guess if that's all announcements and everything, then I'm going to stop recording this and stop living this on Facebook. So